Good evening. Welcome to the April Board of Education meeting via Zoom. I'd ask everybody to rise for the pledge. Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. To begin, I'd like to welcome the community that's here. There's about 50 members of the community here with us today. Hope that you're all doing well and your families are doing well. This remains a very, very difficult time, both from an educational standpoint and a human suffering standpoint. Sadly, here in Jericho, we've suffered the loss of many, a number of individuals, and the number keeps growing. So while during the governor's press conferences, the numbers are certainly looking more favorable, and we can see that proverbial light at the end of the tunnel. We know that the pain that this community and all of New York is feeling is very real, and that pain is not going away anytime soon, and we will more than likely hear of more loss. So we wish all of you and your families good health and continued safety, and we send out our sincerest condolences to anyone in the Jericho community and anybody in the Jericho community who knows anybody who's been sick or passed away from this horrible COVID-19. That being said, I'm just going to go straight through in order if I could. Recommended actions: approval of minutes. Recommended action be resolved the Board of Education make any necessary changes and corrections, and approve the minutes of the executive session dated March 12th, 2020, the budget review meeting March 19th, the regular meeting dated March 26th, the community forum on April 7th, 2020. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Jill, I have a second. Barbara, any discussion?
No, thank you for the changes that were made.
You're welcome.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
What we're going to do now is we're going to turn it over to Hank for an extended superintendent's report. Hank will update everybody on what's going on, and when we finish and we get to the end, when we get the public opportunity to be heard portion of the meeting, as you know, you can ask questions via the chat. I see a few people have chatted already. I haven't been able to take a quick peek at what it was, but the board and administration will try to answer any and all questions that we can that are posed to us this evening. So Hank, please.
Thank you, Bill. And as Bill started off, our heartfelt sympathies to the families in our school district who suffered losses over the last 2 or 3 weeks. This disease has definitely struck us and struck our school community in the most significant of ways, and I think it's important that we not lose sight of our community coming together and supporting our families and our staff members who are at this point hurting and needing our support. That is our number one strength right now and our number one priority. We have an incredible school community that rallies support when needed, and I don't think there's ever been a time of greater need than we are right now, and appreciate how our school staff and our school community has come together to support our families in need. Let me go through a relatively long list of updates. The first issue that I've received the most questions on is what is the status of school closure? Officially right now, we're closed till May 15th. However, as I shared with you 2 weeks ago, the folks that we're in touch with in Albany, Board of Regents, people in DOH, I think that everyone is saying it's 99% sure that we will not be reopening the school year. So, as we continue to plan for the current, our 6 weeks of virtual learning. We are continuing to look forward into the months of May and June with an eye toward what will May and June look like if we are closed. Obviously, the next question to that is, and I think you've all heard this, if we're closed till June 30th, on July 1st, it's not just going to be a flip of the switch from off to on for summer. So we are, again, carefully monitoring what the summer might look like, and very frankly, what the fall might look like as well. What are the issues that we need to plan for the possibility of summer, possibility of fall? And we're trying to stay on top of that as best we can. One of the other questions we've been asked as well, you had agreed to run a science acceleration program this summer. What's the status of that science acceleration program? Obviously, we're still in a hold pattern, and we will continue to monitor what our status might be this summer to run that accelerated program. We've made the decision that once we know whether we're up and running in the summer, we'll make a decision. If we make a decision to cancel that we cannot run that summer acceleration program, we will run that program in the summer of 2021. So the kids will still have an opportunity to pick up that 1 year of acceleration. As you know, and as you've heard from John Mankiewicz sent out an email this past week that our spring sports season for all of Long Island has been canceled. And we're now obviously in discussions in terms of what will fall sports look like with some of those activities kicking up in the third week of August. Other questions that we've been asked is, impact on budget. And we've been asked about our part-time employees. All of the Jericho employees, whether part-time or full-time, are still on payroll. We have also worked out an agreement with our First Student Bus Company. Thank you to Lorianne and to Victor. But First Student has agreed that all of the First Student bus drivers who transported Jericho kids, all of those people are on payroll as we speak. Questions about the budget vote. Obviously, we're concerned in terms of when will there be a budget vote and a vote on the trustees for the Board of Education. We're eagerly awaiting for word from the governor in terms of setting that date. He has set the date for the Democratic primary, and we're anxiously awaiting for him to set a date which may be the first or second Tuesday in June. We're not sure yet. The process that we are hearing at this point is it will most likely be an absentee ballot process. And again, this is not set in stone. This is what we're hearing. The probability is community members who meet the 3 requirements to vote. All of our community would receive an application for an absentee ballot. They would mail those applications for absentee ballot into Victor's office, and they would be given an absentee ballot to vote on the board election and the board trustees. Again, stay tuned for clarification on that one as well. Also, you'll notice if you drive by the building that the governor did say that essential construction can continue. The construction on school buildings that are related to health and safety, related to educational program, is viewed as essential. So all of the construction projects that we currently had planned for the spring are currently underway, our pool and some other renovations. If school is canceled through June 30th, as soon as that occurs, we will move forward with the work that we had planned to do in the middle school, high school, and Jackson this summer, and possibly, hopefully, will get a jump start on that construction. We continue to support our kids with providing essential workers with childcare, and we're continuing to feed our free and reduced students lunches through this COVID-19 period as well. A week and a half ago, we celebrated an elementary staff parade through the district, which was probably one of the most successful and appreciated events since we have closed in the second week of March. It went over really, really well, appreciated by our teachers, our parents, and our kids, and literally hundreds of emails coming in saying that was a highlight given the crazy times that we're currently operating under. We are currently planning, the elementary principals are planning for another parade sometime in early May, and the middle school and high school teaching staff, working again with Lori Ann and with middle school and high school administration, are planning a staff parade for May the 1st. That is, Denise, I think that's ready to go out. That announcement is ready to go out very shortly.
Yes, tomorrow.
Okay, so that will be taking place on May the 1st. We look forward to that event. If you again, participated in the elementary parades, they lasted on average of about 2 hours and had about 60 or 70 cars in them. This parade will be both middle school and high school staff, and I'm assuming that it will be a much longer parade. In the past, we had great support from the Jericho Fire Department. We thank the captain, Chris, for supporting our parade, and look forward to his support in the future parades. Also, Nassau County Police and the local Muttontown Old Westbury police departments also helped us, and we appreciate their support. Our teachers are, again, in supporting our kids, are not only providing instruction, but have been reaching out as best as we can to support our kids and providing them with both social and emotional support through this time period. And again, I cannot thank our teaching staff, our administrative staff, and our support staff for the role that they're playing in supporting our students while they're busy supporting their own families during those last 6 challenging weeks. One of the areas that we've been discussing now for 2 or 3 weeks is celebrating our seniors. Many of you may have seen my quote in Newsday. I think it was in yesterday's Newsday, where I said we feel so terribly for our seniors and what has become their spring and all of their activities that they were looking forward to. Our high school administration has been on many Zooms where the county is discussing what are all the creative possibilities to support and showcase our seniors. The 56 superintendents in Nassau County have also been part of several Zoom meetings, looking, again, exploring creatively what is possible for our kids. We've gotten recommendations from our senior parents and from our senior kids themselves. And again, I think high school administration is looking forward to putting together what are some possible scenarios of what graduation could look like. What are some scenarios in terms of senior prom, senior party, senior awards, and honoring our senior athletes. So there are several excellent suggestions. And I think that, in looking at what's possible in June versus what might be possible in July or August, I know that one of the things that we've talked about is that our kids, by and large, are still home the weekend of August 8th and August 9th. So, is it possible that there could be some form of graduation, an alternate graduation plan for that weekend? We've also looked at, and again, many districts have looked at a senior prom, senior party, looking at Thanksgiving weekend, or looking at the winter Christmas vacation period. So there are a lot of suggestions, and the conversations that we've had with high school administration, we're looking to expand our thought exchange process, where we will get feedback from our kids, our staff, our parents, in what the possibilities are and which of those possibilities are the most popular. We will not forget our seniors, and we will do everything in our power to ensure that their spring is as special as we possibly can make it. Let me talk briefly about fourth quarter grades. That also has been an area of great concern, and we've had conversations. High school administration, the teachers in the high school have had conversations over the last 2 weeks in terms of coming up with a system that treated our kids fairly, a system that also encouraged our kids to stay engaged. I think it's important from our perspective that our students, for their health, continue to stay engaged in their academics through the end of the school year. So what we've come up with, and again, I think this makes a lot of sense. We've come up with a system for the fourth quarter where kids will receive a pass plus, a pass, or an NC for no credit. A pass plus will be students proficiently engaged in all fourth quarter activities and objectives. A pass, students were proficiently engaged in at least 2/3 of the fourth quarter activities and objectives. A NC, or no credit, would be the student engaged in less than 2/3 of the fourth quarter activities and objectives. How will this play out in terms of final grade? What we're looking at is, in terms of final grade, we're looking at a baseline that will basically look at first quarter, second quarter, and third quarter. Probably looking at a third, and a third. Again, yet to be finalized, but that's how we're looking at the final transcript grade. And as you're aware, the final transcript has 1 grade and 1 grade only on it. The final transcript that is sent to colleges and universities. What the recommendation is that a student in the fourth quarter who gets a P+, so a student who's been completely engaged for the entire fourth quarter, that student's final grade will go up 1 notch. So if that student's final grade is an A-, and that student gets a P+, that A- will become an A. A student who gets a P in the fourth quarter, there will be no impact on their final grade. For a student who gets a no credit, a student who does less than 2/3 of the assigned work in the fourth quarter, that student will be penalized 1 notch. So that student with an A average, if they get an NC in the fourth quarter, that A will become an A-. What our hope is that this will encourage students to stay involved and give us the flexibility to have a system that everybody's aware of as we go into the fourth quarter. Other just informational items. The JEF bricks are that the JEF was selling this past year and will be donating funds to the school district to support our social emotional programs. Those bricks will start to be installed sometime within the next several weeks. One of our parents recommended or came forth with a suggestion that we print Jericho Strong t-shirts, t-shirts that will say Jericho Strong. We're going to sell those t-shirts for $20, I believe through, I think through the PTA. Of the $20, the entire proceeds, the profit of those t-shirts will go to support the families in our school district that are having either financial need or any type of financial need. That money will be directed to them. Other informational items, we will be circulating a potential calendar for the 21-22 school year shortly. Also informationally, officially all of the school grounds of the Jericho School District, all of our grounds are closed. That is in coordination with the town of Oyster Bay, that has also closed all of the town parks and recreation facilities in the town of Oyster Bay. The last question that we've been asked is relative to student access to our buildings, staff access to our buildings. What we're going to ask is that our building administration let their staff and students know of the 2 or 3 hours per week that the building will be open for students to pick up material from their lockers, or for staff members to come in to pick up instructional materials to help support their online learning. So you will be hearing from your building administrator. For example, our building will be open on Mondays from 11 to 12, on Wednesdays from 10 to 11, and on Fridays from 9 to 10, something in that vein, so that students and staff will still have access to their lockers and instructional materials for our staff. That bill concludes my list of items under the superintendent's report. And with that, I encourage everyone to stay Jericho strong, continue to hold hands with our friends and neighbors and support them, as our Jericho community has done such a good job in doing. Thanks, Bill.
Thank you, Hank. Thanks for all the updates. It was quite a bit. I'm sure that some questions will pop up regarding the grading policy for the fourth quarter, but I think that's an excellent idea. I think that really takes into consideration everybody's concerns, and it's keeping students engaged, and it's giving students an opportunity to increase their grade, and no one's really getting significantly hurt by that. So thank all of you for working that out. I think that's a really solid plan, in my opinion. I would like to say, since we are going to open the buildings for a couple hours a week for both teachers and students and staff to retrieve what they need, I would ask Hank that we follow what I believe is the governor's directive, and require everybody who enters that building to be wearing a mask at all times.
Agreed.
And obviously to not socialize with one another and to maintain social distancing. And I know that seems like a simple thing to say, but when you see somebody you haven't seen in a few months, it's a little tough to just not want to walk up to them. So everybody's been doing a great job, and we just ask that if people come to the school, that they're adhering to that. Anybody else have any comments on the superintendent's report before we move with the schedule?
Bill, let me respond. If I could respond to one question, and again, it's also a question that we've been asked a couple of times. What are we going to do in June or before we come back to school in September, to assess where our kids are and what kind of supports they need? Obviously, we've had conversations with our teachers and our administrators that one of the things we're going to need to do is to assess, by department, by school, where we are, and the progress that we've made being online till June. We're even thinking about what, if we have a normal opening in September, might we take 1 or 2 or 3 additional superintendent conference days at the opening of school to assess the curriculum that was covered, and where we may need to fill some holes, and also to look at, very frankly, where we may need to support individual kids in in what has transpired in their lives over the prior 4 or 5 months. Please, please know that we will continue to assess where we are when this is all over. And again, as our teachers always do so well, provide supports for our kids and fill holes where we need to fill holes.
Thanks. Anybody else have any comments before we move to the
Just
next portion
kind
of
of
our meeting?
kind of the same thing. You're talking about assessing students, but also how or when will we assess the impacts on our budget, positive and negative, for both this year and next year? There are certain things I would assume are lower this year, probably no overtime, things like that. But we probably will have some additional expenses next year. I would think we might need more learning center staff and support staff for students who may come back with learning issues, psychological issues, that would be greater than the normal need. So obviously there were some positive and negative impacts on the budget this year and next year. So when will we be able to start assessing that?
Let me start off, and then I'll kick it over to Victor. But again, I think we will assess, as this comes to conclusion and we know what opening looks like, we will start to, by department, by building, by kid, assess what our needs are and where and how we need to support our kids. Thank goodness we always have flexibility in our budget in terms of staffing, in terms of LCI staffing, and we'll make those determinations as we always do based on need. Victor, why don't you talk a little bit more on the global issue?
And Victor, when you do, can you include, since there already was a question, can you include some comments on our school buses and whether there's perceived savings currently right there?
Sure, Bill, thanks. As far as expenses this year, certainly there are certain areas that will be lower for reasons that Barbara had already mentioned. And there will be some additional expenses next year. And to Hank's point, we do budget conservatively. And I feel next year's budget, we would be okay with those additional expenses. As I said before, looking long term, 21-22 is definitely going to be a tough budget year with the combination of state aid falling and healthcare expenses. I would imagine calendar year 2021 and 2022, we're going to see significant increases in healthcare costs. And we'll also see significant increases potentially in the teachers' retirement system and the employees' retirement system, as that is based on a 5-year average of the stock market. And as we know, in the first few months of 2020, that's fallen dramatically. So that's a major 21-22 right now is the biggest concern I see. I see this year and next year budgetarily being, I don't want to say okay, but not as bad until we get to the 21-22 school year. Now, that being said, that all depends on the state and if they get federal stimulus as a state. I know there were comments earlier today based on Governor Cuomo's speech, but we'll see how that plays out. Right now, we're in a decent position. I think there was a question from Peter alluding to the board election and the vote and whether we have to do the absentee ballots and send it to everyone. That will be out of our control. We will not have a choice in that, as that will be determined 100% solely by the state. And it, if it's determined by the state, they will let us know how that process will take place. And quite honestly, it could be a little differently for different regions of the state. The governor said earlier that he may open up different parts of the state earlier than others. So it may look different for an upstate community than it does for Nassau, Suffolk, and Westchester counties with respect to the vote. But certainly all 56 districts in Nassau, all the districts in Suffolk, that process will be identical, and it will be a state-led process, and they will determine and tell us how that process will take place. Another question I saw was the tax payments that are delayed for a month. I did an analysis of the first 3 weeks of April and compared it to the first 3 weeks to last April. And we're receiving about 65% of the tax payments as compared to the same 3 or 4 weeks from a year ago. That's good news. It's maybe more than I would have thought of, knowing that it got delayed a month, but it's still down. And we're looking at the cash flow very, very closely. And I will likely bring a TAN resolution to the board in the May board meeting, which would allow us, in the event we needed to borrow on a short-term basis tax anticipation notes as we get closer to the middle of June, which is the point that if the tax monies do not come in, that's what the time it would be an issue as we have to repay the TAN that we borrowed last September, and the payroll at the end of June is always higher due to the final payments to the teachers and staff. So we're looking at that on a weekly basis, actually daily basis, to cash flow. We're in fine shape right now, and if we continue at the pace that we are now, we'll still be in good shape through the middle of June, and we'll have to make a decision at that point. But right now, we're still in good shape. Someone asked about the transportation. I know Hank mentioned before, for a student degree to hire back the drivers, which is honestly part of the Jericho family and Jericho staff. That's great news for the workers, and even it's great news for us when we do begin school again, that we have a company that has staff ready to go, and our drivers who know the community, and we're ready to roll again. One of the fears that not only for us, but for many districts across the county is if we lose that, if we lose the employees, the contractors are turning around and saying, well, you're going to have to rebid for next year because we just can't afford it if we don't get payments in the interim. And the fear is, and not just the fear, the reality is, because we've already seen this in other districts who have recently gone out for an RFP for transportation, 20 to 30% increases. And for us, that would be close to $1.5 million, and not just for 1 year. That would be $1.5 million each year after that, additional to the budget. And that's what we're trying to prevent. And in addition, we're trying to prevent instability within our transportation department, because they play such an important role for our students, for our parents, and for our entire community.
Hank, what have we decided about clubs and coaches in terms of paying?
We're currently in discussion with the JTA in some equitable solution to reimbursement based upon time worked.
Mm-hmm. And Victor, if things continue to go okay financially throughout the rest of this year, if there are some savings, are there expenses from next year that could be moved into this year's budget? Can we kind of prepay anything?
No, we can't prepay anything, but what we can do is, if there is additional surplus this year, put it in reserves. And where I know my association is currently speaking with the Office of the State Controller to see if there could be any flexibility with number one, the 4% requirement, which is extremely low, and other flexibilities such as I know the controller a couple of years ago when looking at districts, not us, when they were overfunded in their one particular reserve, the EBLR reserve, he allowed those districts flexibility to use that, what he said was overfunding in that particular district towards the revenue and lowering taxes and offsetting additional expenses. So we're in discussions with OSC on that. I saw a follow-up question on transportation, and what we're trying to negotiate is a low, not 100% obviously of the monthly cost, but something lower than that, receiving a discount while they're continuing to pay the drivers. In addition, there will be no fuel expense, so that will be a savings. That will be an additional credit off of the discount we receive over the next 3 months. And the reason why I feel, I think many of us feel that the cost could increase is we've seen it. We've seen it over the past year happening anyway, even before the COVID outbreak. Districts that were going out for RFPs or being forced to go out for RFPs or bids or rebidding their transportation contract have seen increases upwards of 20%. And I just heard of one literally in the last month that was approaching 30% increase. So that's just a reality based on recent history, why we're thinking that.
I've got just one last question. I know some of our contracts distinguish between salary that we owe employees when school is open versus when school is closed. So are we paying as though school is open or school is closed?
We are now paying as if school is open.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
We've kind of just, morphed right into the public opportunity to be heard because we're answering some of the questions that are in the chat. I know Hank and Barbara and everybody's looking at those questions. Hank, there's some questions about regions and what would, what are, that there's a potential, this is kind of a speculative question, is a potential for a reoccurrence of the virus in September and what would happen in that regard. And Barbara, if you could look at some of those educational questions that are being posed when Hank just kind of has a brief opportunity to respond, maybe you can respond.
Yeah, I mean, basically, the Regents exams in August have not yet been canceled. As we all know, the June Regents have been canceled. Departments in the high school are talking about whether they may do some departmental projects or departmental take-home assessment. So that is still being discussed. In terms of what happens with the August Regents and how that might impact, it's too early to know how that will unfold or impact our kids. So we're waiting to hear word from Albany about those Regents exams. I'm trying to see if there were any other, the other question was what happens if there is a reoccurrence in the fall. Basically at this point we are, and again, I can happily report, we're operating under the direction of the governor's office, and that is the primary director in terms of our opening, not opening, how we're opening, with advice and recommendations coming from the New York State Department of Health and the New York State Education Department. So, if there were a reoccurrence in the fall, and that would force us, back into the same situation we are now, obviously we would make that work. And again, depending upon what's thrown at us, our staff is good enough and creative enough that we'll make whatever's thrown at us work. But again, right now, how the decisions, the global decisions are made, those are going to be made out of Albany, and we are sitting waiting for each segment of decision to be made.
Thanks. Victor, this wasn't a question, but if you could, just briefly update us on how the school lunch program is going and what we're doing here in Jericho to provide meals?
Absolutely. Thanks for asking that, actually. The food service workers have been doing an outstanding job making lunches not only for our free and reduced students, but our close to 40 homeless students. We are physically delivering the meals to the homeless students 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. In each of those days, we're providing breakfasts and lunches for 2 days, and on Friday for Friday and for the weekend as well. And it's going very well. We've had different staff rotating through providing the service. And we also have different drivers doing that on a weekly basis, providing the service to actually deliver the meal. I sent out initially, when this first started, an email to the parents of free and reduced, and I sent a reminder on Monday. That's where we are right now. And I've received a bunch of emails back. Either give the meals to other children, we're okay, or thank you, et cetera. So it's been quite successful, I would say.
Thanks. There's a couple questions. There's a couple questions here about Board of Ed, elections and petitions and things of that nature. We have 2 seats that are open for this coming election, and we have 2 submitted petitions thus far. Has there been any other guidance, Hank or Victor or even Chris? Have you heard anything regarding deadlines or extending deadlines?
There, at this point, the initial date of just after June 1st, with no additional detail, has been provided. But what I will say, whatever that eventual date is, all of the other dates will just automatically fit in because you have 30-day type of deadlines beforehand. So all of that will just back up. So for example, if petitions were due April 21st for the May 19th meeting, if the new budget vote is June, I'm making this date up, June 17th, the petitions would be due May 16th, 17th, whatever that business day of 30 days prior to that. So all of those dates will just be automatic once they actually choose the new date.
So, Bill, there are 2
Great.
things that are in play here, which is the exact date for the election. The only thing we can tell you about that is that it will be after June 1st. Hank did mention the second week in June. We think that's likely. Number 2, in terms of the timelines, as soon as we get those timelines, we'll get them out to the district clerks and obviously to Victor as well, so we can let Victor and the community know, here's what is due when, here's what needs to be done when. And then the big issue is, how is voting actually going to go place? I know someone made reference to, can it be electronic? We think that's unlikely. We do think it's going to be the old-fashioned paper ballots, almost like on an absentee basis, which creates major logistical issues for the district clerk because you had to send out the ballots, had to get them back, and there's going to be a lot of legwork involved with that. But still, we're waiting to hear from SCD as to how they want us to handle it. And then guidance will be provided therefrom.
Thank you for recognizing that, Chris, for the district. I appreciate it.
Now, it's going to be a handful.
But I just,
Barbara Bauer, have you had an opportunity to look at some? Did you want to say something first, Barbara?
I just, while we're on elections, I just want to, make it very clear. I've announced before, but for anybody who didn't know, I am not seeking re-election this year. Boy, what a way to go out. So,
You
but can you
term
tell me?
limit.
I'm sorry.
I said you've term limited out 21 years.
21 years is plenty. I was hoping to go out in a happier kind of year. Is it fair to ask who has submitted petitions?
Well, at this point, because everything's being pushed back, I think it's almost premature to say who has submitted petitions because the entire window is going to be open up. So submitting at this point is almost like premature.
With regard to the question in terms of topics and standards that are prioritized for the 4th quarter, there are some subject areas and courses for which Those topics automatically appear during this period of time. The curriculum associates are working with the teachers with regard to individual courses to determine what objectives will be set for this particular quarter, and the marking for this quarter will be based upon those objectives. We are looking to acknowledge student work and the quality of work that they are doing. So looking at their grades would be an acknowledgement of the work that they are doing. And in the elementary grade levels, the principals will be working with each particular grade level to ensure that those topics and those standards that need to be covered during this quarter are done.
Thanks. I mean, there's a question here, Barbara, and I know you briefly touched on it, but I've heard it. I've been asked it a couple times. Listen, we're doing the best we can. All districts are doing the best we can. From talking to colleagues, I think we're doing a little bit better than everybody else. But people are concerned. They're taking a high-level course, or even an elementary student. Obviously the teaching and the learning can't be the same as if you're in the classroom. Are we going to be able to make adjustments that ordinarily we might not have to do, assuming we're back and running in September?
One of the benefits, there are a number of different things we can do. One of the benefits that we do have, one of the advantages that we have is that we still have the research and development workshops that we have planned for this summer. We have the vast majority of our teachers are working, are participating in those workshops. That will give us the opportunity to look at curriculum for September, October, and make adjustments that we need to do for some courses where we have to ensure that students have the skills and abilities and knowledge that they will need to move on to the next course. The second element that we have is we do have at the elementary and middle school level, we do universal testing of the students in the areas of math, ELA, and in some cases science. So that will also give us a baseline from which we can work with our students. So, as Hank mentioned, we might be also looking at the possibility of adding on a day or possibly 2 superintendent's conference days to further that work as we move forward.
Thank you. I think we've covered almost all the questions that are here. If anybody sees one that they think we haven't touched on, there's one that just came up.
Bill, there was a couple I'll follow up on. One, I think.
Yeah, these ones. If you can explain just very briefly, Victor, the process for capital improvements and dealing with state aid.
Sure. Is that the air conditioning question?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Yeah. So just to give a little background, we've already provided central air conditioning in our Caniag and Seaman elementary schools, and the voters have authorized all buildings at this point. We received approval for Jackson several months back, and we went out to bid, and we're set to go to do that work this summer. Again, unless something COVID related happens, we're not able to do that work because we have to make sure that once we start that project, we can finish it before September. So we're looking at that very closely. And if the governor comes out at some point and says, Nassau County, Suffolk County, New York City, you're closed definitively through June 30th, then we could certainly get a head start on that as well. So we're ready to go on that, which is good news. The high school and middle school went out to bid very recently. That bid award has been already made. It will not take place this summer, though. It's not in a manner that can, as far as ordering the materials and getting them here in a timely fashion due to what's going on. But it is the high school, middle school, the way the system is set up, it's actually different than the elementary schools where you have all the casework attached to it. So we can actually do that after hours once we start receiving the units after hours and doing a couple of units at a time throughout the school year. So we're hopeful by the end of this summer, all three elementary schools will be up and running with central air. And by the end of next year, by next summer, we'll have the entire district with central air. I think there was another question, if it's okay, Bill, that related to, are we going to get penalized for not being open the Thursday and Friday prior to Easter? Again, our calendar is more stringent than the statewide calendar. The statewide calendar, you need a minimum of 180 days. Our calendar is 186 days to begin with. So if we get to the end of the year and we're above 180, which at this point, I'm confident we will be, there should not be a penalty. With that said, it's certainly up to the state at that point. But we would have certainly met the state requirements for 180 days.
Thank you. Hey, Hank?
Bill, the feedback that we have received, again, the initial word we got from the governor's office was mandating that we be in session from the point of closure till, literally till the end of June. In conversations we've had with Dan Fuller, who's the educational aide to the governor, he basically has backed off, understanding that, as a district has 180, 182, 186 day requirement, that they at some point would come out with an acknowledgement that your school year is completed once your calendar is completed. While that's not been formally addressed, we do believe that the end result will be Jericho will have 186 days of school, not 194.
Okay. Hank, briefly, there's a question here from Michelle about the grading policy. I would briefly respond and just, I don't know, maybe she wasn't here, but during the public forum that we held, the town hall, we had Greg Sloan as one of the panelists, and he had indicated to the entire community that he's probably talked to, upwards of 100 universities and colleges, and that they had told him that even if we went to pass-fail for the third and fourth quarter, as many schools are doing, that the colleges are fully aware because they're dealing with the same situation on their end. But if you can maybe further touch on that, she seems concerned that there'll be great inflation. I think that you found a perfect mix and way to keep our students motivated. I mean, this is not easy. We're talking about potentially March, April, May, and June, and keeping our students motivated. So I think the plan's a great one, but if you want to add anything to that, Hank, go ahead.
Bill, I agree. I think, again, there are 5 possibilities out there, and I think we found the best one we could. Obviously, from our discussions, there was some unanimity and feeling from high school staff and high school administration that this was, of all the options, the best option for our kids.
Thanks.
Bill, there's a question about the elementary students and the difference in the level of maturity of high school students and elementary students to participate. One of the plans that we've put in place for the elementary students is the teachers are not only doing live presentations with entire classes, but they're also doing smaller groups. And that, of course, enables greater participation and greater communication between the teacher and the smaller groups of students. So we are very aware of that, and we are trying to accommodate that with the small groups that we have planned for the students. I hope that answers your question.
Thanks. And Ira had asked, are there plans to honor the tenure recipients? And my answer to that would be simple. As Hank indicated earlier, and we were talking predominantly about students, but there are a lot of students, a lot of teachers, a lot of people that are ordinarily honored in the spring. We're doing our best to see, obviously for the seniors, obviously what we can get done before they leave for college, including graduation and, a virtual prom or whatever the options might be, so we're working on those things. And then a lot of the other things we're planning to move probably to the fall, because you don't really want to do these honorees on a Zoom meeting, I don't think. We'd really like to give the people our full appreciation, including my colleague Barbara for her 21 years. I would be remiss to say I'd want to celebrate that on a Zoom meeting after all your service. So we know you're not going anywhere, so I'm sure you'd be happy for us to do that in the fall in a public
May
meeting.
go
God
somewhere.
willing, everybody. Well, you can come back. I know you go a lot of places. But, just wanted to address that. I didn't see.
Yeah, Bill, basically, we've asked, the curriculum associates to continue to keep a list of celebrations for our staff and celebrations for our kids. So we have a running list of kids and staff members that we want to take an opportunity to honor.
Great. Hank, and I know this question has come up a number of times, and I have to say I don't think it's a poor suggestion. People have said a number of the Zooms are optional, and they're asking if they could be mandatory. I wonder what the administration feels about that. To me, any way to keep kids engaged, and the Zoom seems like as natural as you can get for a teaching setting when you're remote. At least people can see everybody. So what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, very frankly, Barbara's and my position has been that that instruction is not optional. So we will go back around and double check with our curriculum associates and building administrators. We want kids engaged, and kids should be on Zoom. One of the interesting things, conversations that Barbara and I that we've had is some frustration on the part of our middle school staff when they try to Zoom with kids or interact with kids at 7:30 in the morning. It appears that the Jericho wake-up time for middle school has shifted from 6 o'clock in the morning till much later. So much of the middle school instructional activity is now taking place and starting a little later than 7:30. But again, to your point, Bill, we will go back and double check. In my mind, Zoom academic presentations are not optional.
Great. I mean, and listen, I
May I add to
appreciate
that?
the middle school.
May I add to that,
Yeah, yes, of course. I'm sorry.
where there were conflicts, there might have been some options provided for students, and the middle school administration is working on looking at schedules in such a way so that there are no conflicts, so that the number of those types of optional activities will be decreased greatly, and students will understand exactly what's being given at each time.
Thank you. People are asking if we are actually using Zoom and or Google Classroom. I know there was some security issues with Zoom. I think we've gotten around those. Is that correct?
Yeah, Patrick has been working with Zoom, although we have asked our staff members to use Google Classroom and alternate means of communicating with kids. Although Patrick has assured us that our upgraded use of the Zoom platform is secure than the original ones.
Thank you. I mean, I think that we've responded to basically every question there. There's some other questions about celebrating, and as we said, we'll try to celebrate everybody as best we can. This continues to be a work in progress, and we certainly appreciate everything everybody's doing and all the cooperation we're getting from home. And I did want to say that, Hank, after you said that about the middle school, I would like to thank Don and Chad and the entire staff for adjusting schedules, because listen, these days are really, really long for folks that are home. So if kids can sleep a little bit later and we push their instruction a little bit later, I think it makes quarantining at home a little bit easier for everybody. So thank you for that. Let's move on now. By the way, we have about almost 60 people in this Zoom meeting, and we also have another 50 people on Facebook Live, which is kind of great. So let's go to unfinished business, please. Adoption of policy 1280, student voter registration and pre-registration. Be resolved, the Board of Education adopt the following policy. Student voter registration and pre-registration. Have a motion?
So,
Dab? Have a
so
second?
move.
You already moved. Thanks. Pam, second. Any discussion?
I just want to reiterate my comment from last time that I want to make sure that when the regulations for that are written up, that we ensure that we're not putting any non-citizens on the spot by making it really obvious who is and isn't signing up to vote.
Great. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Unfinished, new business, approval of, sorry, folks. Approval of schedules, business affairs schedules, U9586 through KK9578 inclusive. Do I have a motion? Pam, do I have a second?
Second.
Barbara, any discussion?
Um,
No? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Well, that covers everything that we had tonight. So I want to thank all of the folks who joined us tonight on Zoom and those who've joined us on Facebook Live. And again, say thank you to our communicative hero, Denise Nash, for hooking up both Zoom and Facebook simultaneously. That was great. It gave people two avenues in which to watch this tonight.
Bill, I wonder, as we look toward our May board meeting, whether we want to go with the same time frame of 4 and 4:30, or if the board wants to move it to the evening. Let's set that now so that Victor can put that in place for as the clerk of the board.
I actually think this time is great. It gives people an opportunity to have dinner as a family after the meeting and get their kids settled in. That's sort of my opinion, and it seems like it was very well attended tonight by over 100 people. Anybody else have a thought on that?
There's a comment from somebody, one of the members
Yes,
of the public, saying
I see it.
people are working until, probably at least till 5.
So should
Oh,
we
I mean,
make
listen,
it 5
I'm
o'clock?
flexible.
If we make it 5 o'clock, that probably covers the 9 to 5 people.
So you need 5
We
and
can do that.
5:30.
You want to do 5 and 5:30 or 4:30 and 5? Either way.
I would prefer the 5:30.
You got it.
Thank you.
Everybody okay with that? I kind of just assumed that everybody would be okay with that.
Good. And again, Bill,
Pam's
just
got
to,
quite the hectic schedule.
yeah, Bill, just again, one of the heroes, and again, our staff to a person, our administrators, our teachers have really risen to the challenge. But again, you said it, and I just want to underline it. Denise has been the glue that has kept all of the Zoom meetings going, managing our Zoom meetings, helping with board and administrative meetings and teacher meetings. Just an opportunity to publicly thank Denise for all of her hard work over the last 6 weeks, as opposed to before that.
Thank you,
There you
Denise,
go.
as always. Can I just ask a question for clarification? While we were talking, I went back to check my emails. Were petitions submitted or requested?
Requested, none have been officially submitted at this point.
Okay, yeah, important to clarify.
Yeah, I think I spoke incorrectly, Barbara. Sorry.
Okay, no, I just want to make sure the public, if somebody's interested in submitting, they don't want to feel like the 2 seats are already spoken for. That's it. Thank you.
I just wanted to say my spot is up for re-election and I am planning to run again. And Divya Balanchandra is also planning to run. She's picked up a petition as well. So we're both planning to submit petitions when we're able to.
Okay. I think that about concludes our meeting. A little upset that I was coughing and none of you on the panel offered me a glass of water. There you go. Thank you. Virtual water, virtual sharing. Again, thanks to everybody. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second. Second, Deb. All in
Deb.
favor?
And yeah, second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Thanks. Have a great night.
Bye, everyone.
Stay safe. Stay healthy. Bye.
Stay healthy, yes.